So the rugby world was shocked on Sunday to learn of the death of former Wallaby lock Dan Vickerman. He was just 37. He was a father, a husband, and to those who didn't know him well, a happy and successful bloke. But since his death, those close to him have revealed that Vickerman was actually struggling to cope with life after rugby, a career that for him finished at the 2011 World Cup. I'm joined by All Blacks great Sir John Kirwan, who's talked so openly about his own problems with depression and in doing so brought out of the shadows the issue of men's mental health. John, you did struggle with depression while you were at the peak of your playing power. How hard was it for you to admit at that time that you were in trouble and I guess to get a bit of help?
Yeah, firstly, really sad day with Dan passing away, and my thoughts go out to his wife and young family. So, it's a real tragedy, whichever way you look at it. But, it's probably something that I understand, and everyone will be saying, why and judging and stuff. But, I had mine for 5 years and didn't want to talk to anyone about it. I think it's probably because I felt that it was a weakness rather than an illness. And that's sort of what I talk about now. This is an illness, not a weakness. And so, like any other illness, if you get it early and you talk to someone and get help, then, you can get through it. So, if there's anyone out there listening who's suffering, reach out and get help, because that's eventually what I did. And, and I'm in a really good space.
How did you go from being thinking of it as a weakness to an illness then? What was the catalyst for change within your own mind?
I didn't want to be around anymore. I'd had enough of fighting in my own mind, and it was a real battle every minute, every hour, every day against the illness, and it was so tiring that in the end I was just absolutely exhausted and really had no options left. So, once I went to a psychiatrist, which was a big move. Firstly, I reached out to Doc Mayhew, then told my family, and then eventually found my way to a woman called Louise Armstrong, who was a psychiatrist at the time, and she said, "Oh, you're a rugby player, eh?" I went, "Yep." And she said, "If you had a tight hamstring, what would you do?" And I said, "Well, I'd stop and stretch it." She said, "Okay, you've stopped and stretched it, then you get up again and you keep running and it gets really, really tight. What would you do?" And I said, "Well, I'd ice it and then go to the physio." And she said, "Well, your brain's no different." And that really put it in perspective for me. Then I sort of said to myself, well, I've got a hamstring in the brain, what's the ice and what's the, and who's the physio? And once I worked out that it was an illness and that I could work on the illness and get better, it sort of took the fear out of it for me, and I started that road to wellness.
John, how dark did things get for you?
Pretty dark. I mean, I always remember lying in a hotel room in Buenos Aires, and the window was open, and I wanted to run and jump out. And Michael Jones, and I still don't know why he said it, and he probably doesn't either, but he was in the room with me, and he just at that moment he just said to me, "JK, you've got a good heart," and it was one of those things that I kept repeating to myself for the next 3 days until I got home. And so that was sort of the tipping point for me, and then I reached out and got help. So I knew I was in trouble when you want to run and jump out a window.
Yeah. Contemplating suicide is a difficult thing to talk about later, isn't it?
Yeah, look, and I never really planned it. So I was quite fortunate that I wasn't that suicidal. That was probably the scariest moment that I had around, I've had enough of this. But I never really planned anything that bad. So I was fortunate that my depression wasn't, didn't have those extremes in it. So I feel fortunate about that.
Do you think Kiwi blokes are getting a bit better at admitting that they've got a hamstring problem in the brain?
Yeah, I think we are. I think, the more we talk about it, discuss it around, unfortunately, the topic comes up often with tragedy, which is really sad. So it'd be nice if we could chat about it away from tragedy. But I think that we are getting better. I think New Zealand's really innovative in what we do. Depression.org.nz has had a lot of people on there. You can do it in the safety of your own home. someone who you care about. I think New Zealanders are pretty good. But, I mean, when you're in there, it's pretty lonely. When you're in there, you do feel isolated and alone. And that's just the illness. That's part of the illness. It takes away your confidence, it takes away your self-esteem. And it's a real battle. So, there are some of the things that happen within that illness, like any other illness. You talk to someone about, their illness, and they'll tell you some of the symptoms. And one of the symptoms of being depressed is that sometimes you can feel really isolated and really alone. And the battle with it all the time is really tiring.
It seems with Dan Vickerman that he was struggling to cope with life after rugby, back in I guess, a regular life after being a professional rugby player. How common is that?
Yeah, I think that there's some stats come out of the States around, their NFL players who, 5 years after they finish, there's a high percentage of them that are broke, divorced, and depressed. So I think in sports it's pretty high, just because you dedicate so much time to it. And then, when you're finished, it abruptly stops. And some of the perceptions that you have, possibly aren't a reality. And also your income streams are very, very different. Some of our people come out unskilled and, 10 years or 12 years behind possibly their friends that have gone through university and got degrees. So, it's not an easy one, and I think it's really important that you do plan for it.
Yeah, do you think enough is being done to help the guys so that they are ready when rugby finishes?
Yeah, I think the Players Committee in New Zealand is a really strong organisation in itself, and I know that they're doing all they can to try and encourage young people to get a life and get some balance. I think it's an imbalance. And look, you need to have imbalance to make it at the highest level. You can't be, when I say imbalance, you can't have a job anymore. You can't not be totally dedicated to it as a profession. But unfortunately, it's a profession that only lasts 10 years. So you dedicate all this time to it, but it doesn't prepare you for anything outside of professional sport. So, I think New Zealand Rugby Union and the players are trying really hard to explain to the young guys that it's really important to look after what's going to happen at the end of your career. But often it's hard to convince a young guy that, we were all like that, weren't we, mate? Like we were probably no different when we were 20, 21. Try and talk to someone about, what are you going to be like when you're, 40. At 20, 21, you just want to enjoy yourself and get into it. So sometimes that message doesn't get through, and it's really no one's fault.
And you're now working not just obviously with in and around sport, but I understand you're also doing a bit of work with businesses, looking after, helping them to look after their staff.
Yeah, exactly. I think with the change in the Health and Safety Act, which I think is fantastic, 1st of April last year, employees also have to employers have to look after their employees from a mental health point of view, as well as physical health and safety, and I think that's a real positive move forward. I'm working with the Giltrap Group around a wellness program so they can look after their people. I'm working with another group of people around creating something that we can click into the workplace that will look after everyone's mental health. And, everyone has mental health. We all have mental health. You all have good days, you have bad days. And I think, with the modern world, it's really important to look after your mental health like the other parts of your health. So for me, it's a real passion. It's something I really care about and want to keep spreading the word and hopefully create some programs where people are, well every day.
Awesome, John. Thank you so much for your time, mate.